Massive government overreach continues to grow in Canada. And of course, now it's being cloaked under the guise of anti-money laundering and anti-terrorism legislation. But in my opinion, it's just another power grab so they can keep better eyes on you and keep their nose in your business. And this recent expansion of the intrusion into your personal life by the government is being done by the way of alterations to something called FINTRAC, or the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Center of Canada. And if you're wondering why a real estate agent like me is the one sounding the alarm, well, I'm going to tell you why that is right after I ask you to subscribe to the channel if you would like to stay up to date here on my local market of Surrey and the Fraser Valley of BC. And if you're in favor of telling the federal government to butt out of your life, go ahead and click the like button for personal privacy. And of course, if you find this type of real estate information fascinating, you may also enjoy downloading my informative Informed Buyer's Guide, totally for free using the link in the description below. And now on to Trudy, big government, and the men in black tracking you and your money that you use to buy real estate. Okay, so if you don't already know, every time you buy or sell real estate with a real estate agent, your agent is required to ID you and report information, including the address of the property that you're either purchasing or disposing of, to the feds. This is done through aforementioned FINTRAC. And of course, since FINTRAC is a government entity, they like to do what they like to do, which is expand. So now when you pay a deposit, us agents have to report that as well. Then they added another form to track if you are a potentially politically exposed person, whatever the heck that means. And the last time FINTRAC was expanded, it went so far as to have agents like me acquire your personal banking information and even the bank account numbers of which those funds are coming from. But now, even the original FINTRAC form is being expanded as well. And it's being expanded in a way that is profiling all participating parties in a real estate transaction in what I think is a very scary way. So to highlight to you, the public, the ridiculous surveillance that all of your agents are required by law to do, either with or without your knowledge, let me show you the most recent version of this FINTRAC form, and stick around for the new part because this is very interesting and a little disturbing. Okay, so here it is. This is the Individual Identification Information Record, otherwise known to us realtors as FINTRACking your clients. Now we're going to start off with the really easy stuff: the transaction, property address, the sales representative, or that would be me and my brokerage, as well as the date of the information when it is being verified. Now, for basically as long as I've been in the business, we have had to fill out this information and actually physically check our client's ID for each and every transaction. So obviously full legal name, address, date of birth, occupation, as well as information in regards to the ID that we check, whether or not it be a passport or driver's license. Now already, not a big deal. Most people are saying I'm not up to no good, so who cares? Take my information. And I kind of get that argument sometimes until, of course, the government starts tracking you in other ways. And as we keep going down, now there is a lot of this form actually doesn't even get filled out because it has to do with things like third parties. If there is a third party happening in a transaction, which in my experience almost absolutely never happens. And then you have to do very skill testing questions like you have to ask the person if indeed this transaction is being done on behalf of a third party or not, and then just hope, I guess, if they are lying, they're not lying to you. But this is the part that I found very interesting. Now, this was not announced to any of us agents. Actually, my brokerage even came out on a Friday afternoon one day and said, hey guys, here's the new form. We weren't told about it. We have to figure out how to do it and how to report. So there was no actual communication from the federal government to the brokerages across the country. It just showed up one day. But here is what it is. It is now literally a questionnaire. So as you are conducting a transaction with me as your agent, I have to go behind the scenes and I have to give the government this information. Now, let me read these to you because they're going to be very, very important. First question: prior to this transaction, did you previously work with this client or have a personal relationship with them? Yes or no? Well, that's a very interesting question. Personal relationship, what does that mean? I don't know. Am I friends with someone? Do I answer yes or no? Now, it's going to be important. What I want you to do is focus here quickly on these questions that we're going to go over, but whether or not yes or no is the right answer. To your knowledge, does a client have a criminal history in regards to illegal drug trafficking, bribery, fraud, forgery, blah, 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 murder? Oh my goodness. If you got a past history of murder and I know about it, you're probably not my client, but that's besides the point. Yes or no? Number 3, to your knowledge, is there a concern about money laundering or terrorist financing in the geographic location of the property or your brokerage location? What a stupid question. So my brokerage and the properties I service are generally in Surrey. So who's going to tell me if Surrey is in this geographic location in concern with money laundering or terrorism? I mean, I would assume if one property is, they all are. If my brokerage is, every transaction. Anyway, absolutely silly. This is funny. Does the client live within 10 kilometers of an international border or 5 kilometers of an international airport? Well, if you're in the lower mainland of BC, this is pretty much everyone. So again, silly. I guess criminals like to be close to airports and the borders so they can cross them. I don't know what that's all about. Is the client a Canadian citizen or permanent resident? Well, right now, all property that I sell is banned to be sold to a non-permanent resident or Canadian citizen. And if you mark here unknown, I think that is absolutely silly. Is the client a domestic PEP or family member or close associate of one? PEP is that politically exposed person. Generally speaking, I think a politically exposed person is supposed to be somebody in office, but they actually haven't given us a definition of exactly what a PEP is. Is the client a foreign PEP or family member, close associate of one? So now I'm supposed to know if somebody is related to somebody who is a government employee or maybe a member of government of another country, yes or no. Now, I don't know how you would ever ascertain that information. And if somebody was trying to launder money, would they tell you that information? Is the client subject to ministerial directive applicable of North Korea? Gonna say no. I haven't sold many properties to North Koreans. Never sold a single property to North Koreans. So again, kind of silly. Again, this is being filled out for every single real estate transaction across the entire country. Are you aware of any other connection to the client and high risk country? If yes, possibly explain. So there is actually a level of high risk countries. I believe there are Iran, again, North Korea. There's some African countries that are on that list. Again, I don't know, kind of silly. I'm not doing many transactions with these people. I do kind of understand if you had to fill this out, if you felt like indeed you did have a client that maybe fit this profile. But no, I have to fill this out for absolutely every client that I deal with. Has the client attempted to conceal their identity in any way? I don't know why you would try and do that transaction if you're a real estate agent, but okay. Has your brokerage previously filed a suspicious transaction or terrorist property report on this client? Now, here's how stupid this question is. How would I know that? Unless it was me doing it. So has my I don't get this information for all the other clients of all the brokerage that is my brokerage, Macdonald Realty. So a stupid question that's always going to be answered no. Of course, unless I have previously sold properties to a terrorist and I'm trying to resell them more property. Does the transaction seem unusual in the light of the client's occupation? What does that mean? I have no idea. Does the transaction involve a third party? Did you ID the client in a non-face-to-face setting? Hey, that's a legitimate question. It's probably the first one. Did the client provide some or all of the deposit in cash? No, it never happens. I know they want you to believe it does. Trust me, that never, ever happens. Does the transaction seem unusual in the light of the client's past transactions with your brokerage? I mean, I don't know if you had somebody that was doing lots of past transactions with your brokerage and now all of a sudden they became a money launderer or a terrorist after the fact. I don't know. It seems kind of ridiculous as well. Is there anything else unusual about the client or the transaction? If yes, please explain. Now, you have to answer yes and no and yes and no and yes and no. Why do I think this is such an overreach? These in themselves, not ridiculous questions. I think most people trying to avoid money laundering in the business probably think these things as reasonable, but let's keep going down. Check this out. Now, depending on your answer that you gave, yes, no, or otherwise, you now get scored. If you end up with a score above 10, you are now a suspicious transaction and the reporting needs to go further. Let's see how some of these points start to stack up. Where was that one question? Number 4. Does the client live within 10 kilometers of an international border? If yes, which is almost every single one of my clients, well, guess what? You just got 2. You are 1/5 of the way there to being a suspicious transaction. And then you have 10-point questions like number 11. Has your brokerage ever previously filed a suspicious transaction or terrorist property report with this client? But after asking myself about you all of these questions, if I do come up with a score for you, my judgment, of 10 or above, now it's my job as a real estate agent to take your suspicious transaction to the next level. So let me conclude with this. Sure, everyone in theory thinks this is just kind of a silly thing. And of course, we can say, well, I'm not one that this is probably going to apply to. I'm probably not going to score above a 10, whatever that is. So why do I care? But I want you to know that the government is tracking this information now on every single person doing a real estate transaction. And it's not being done with the banks who are handling the money, or the lawyers who are helping convey the properties, or even a body of government. Rather, it's being put on the shoulders of the real estate agents themselves. Which leads me to ask 2 questions. 1, how smart is it to put the tracking of money laundering and terrorism on a profession that will profit from the transaction if that professional turns the other cheek? So it's probably a massive waste of time and resources in the first place. And 2, if this is indeed my responsibility as a licensed real estate agent here in Canada, when do I get my badge and gun? Let me know what you think in the comments below about your agent surveilling you for Justin Trudeau. And remember to subscribe, click the like button, and we'll see you in a couple of days.